There's nothing more awful than brewing a huge pot of coffee, hoisting a cup of it to your lips, taking that initially sweet drink and realizing that it's obnoxiously bitter. Your pot of coffee ought to contain a burst of great flavor that warms and gently wakens your taste buds, not an overwhelming dose of early morning bleh. It's curious to me that coffee is regularly associated with awful and bitter flavor. Intense bitterness can play a part in a great mug of coffee, but on the off chance that you drink an extremely great tasting cup of joe, you'll discover that sharpness is a far cry from the true flavor and intent of the original coffee bean. Instead, you'll get an assortment of flavors, from floral notes to spice notes to chocolate notes, and in truth, there's a whole flavor wheel dedicated to depicting great coffee flavors. So why does coffee end up tasting so bitter? Should real coffee be that bitter? Coffee brewing is somewhat of a science, and the most common reason for sharp, bitter coffee is over-extraction. Extraction is the exact method that pulls the flavor out of the ground coffee beans, turning clear water into that delightfully dark brew. When water blends with coffee grounds, a chemical response happens that breaks down flavor compounds and releases strong oils and aromas. The main objective of great brewing is to extricate only the great flavors and not the bitter ones, which come out more pronounced with greater time and higher heat. With that in mind, here are a number of things that might account for that biting brew, which you will hopefully dodge when brewing your next pot of coffee. Reason number 1. You're letting your coffee steep for too long. This is particularly common when making French press coffee, but it can apply to most any brewing method. Numerous individuals have an inclination to pour off the coffee from within the French press even after they've pushed the plunger down. If you're doing this, the coffee will continue to extract, and next time you pour a cup, it'll unavoidably be more sharp and bitter than the first. If you need to drink your coffee at a leisurely pace and not right away, make sure you transfer it quickly to a preheated coffee carafe to keep it hot. That way, you'll stop the coffee from brewing further and lock in the sweet, freshly steeped flavors. Reason number 2. You're using the wrong grind size for your brewing method. If you're getting a bitter brew, the odds are good your grounds are very small and finely ground. Check your roast as well. Darker beans produce a smokier, oilier, and more acrid taste because they've been roasted longer. Lighter roasts tend to be sweeter. Grinding coffee beans changes how completely and quickly flavor components break down when brewing. This suggests that in the case of coarser grinds, you risk under-extraction and maybe a weaker cup of coffee. It's not necessarily true though, because for coffee presses and other brew methods, a coarse grind is desirable. It all depends on how long the hot water will be in contact with the coffee grounds. Different brewing strategies require different grinds, so now and then you should test a variety of grinds and brewing methods to figure out your own personal sweet spot when it comes to coffee. Same goes for the type and source of your coffee beans. Reason number 3. Your water is way too hot. Water temperature plays a key part in coffee brewing, so if your water is way too hot, you release more of the bitter oils and compounds that can curdle your taste buds. According to the National Coffee Affiliation, 195 to 205 degrees Fahrenheit or 90 to 96 degrees Celsius is the perfect water temperature for ideal extraction. Water bubbles at 212 degrees Fahrenheit, 100 degrees Celsius. So, in layman's terms, don't let your water overboil. Let it sit for a fair amount of time before pouring it over your grounds. Measuring with a submersible thermometer can really help out here because it will help you avoid a nasty cup of joe that will make your face really screw up. Reason number 4. Your equipment is probably dirty. Over-extraction isn't the only offender for severe tasting coffee. Built-up coffee left over from the last time you brewed can certainly influence the behavior of future brews in a bad way. It's easy to avoid this mistake though. Just make sure you keep your brewing gear decent and clean so that leftover bitterness doesn't infect your morning coffee ritual. If possible, rinse and dry your equipment immediately. This habit stops the buildup of old coffee dead in its tracks. It isn't hard to do and only takes a minute or two. And remember, the perfect cup is the one you pour yourself. In this short video, I've touched on a few reasons why your morning brew may be bitter and tried to suggest some simple ways that you can improve upon it. But this is by no means a complete course on the subject of coffee. There's a lot more. In future videos, I'll get into some of the finer details of how to take your morning coffee to the next level. For me, it's not about having the perfect cup of coffee. I'll leave that for the purists. What it's really about is experimenting a little and adjusting the bean, the roast, the grind, and the brew, until I make the perfect cup of coffee that suits my particular taste. If that sounds like something you'd be into as well, then like this video and subscribe to my channel. I'll be putting out 1 or 2 videos a week, so don't forget to click the little bell icon when you subscribe so that you get notified when I upload new material. What about you? What's the worst cup of coffee you've ever had? Do you have any special techniques you'd like to share about reducing bitterness in your coffee? Post a comment below and share your experience with everybody.